Are you spiritual? This is Thunder. Do you call yourself a spiritual man or woman? And if so, do you do spiritual practices? In other words, do you just walk around saying you're spiritual, or do you prove it to yourself by doing spiritual practices? And by spiritual practices, I mean Tai Chi, Qigong, breathing, inner alchemy, circulation of the microcosmic orbit, Kriya Yoga, Kundalini energy, asanas, yoga asanas, self-realization. Now, you know what self-realization is? Self-realization is there is no self, or that self that we think we are, or is that. Okay? I am that. Okay? And so, do you just say that on an intellectual level, or do you realize that I am that? And realizing I am that means that you have to do spiritual practices. Spiritual. Now, we're all spiritual in a sense. Everything's spiritual. Everything's supernatural. Everything is. But you can you can wander around all day in the soup and not see the forest for the trees. Okay? If you don't do spiritual practices, and if you don't talk about them with others, and if you don't share your experiences, then how do we know you do them? And really, is it our business if you do them or not? I guess not, but I'm just making a video about it, so I'm just trying to make some points here, okay? And the points are, let's talk about spiritual things, people. I noticed that, it's real easy to talk about what I call mundane things. Okay, music and, in a sense, the top 40, or what movies we watch, or what colors we like, or what paintings we like. That's all good, because that's a form of creativity which is associated with the right brain, and that's where you kind of tap into that spiritual part. So it's all good. It's all good. But do you get down to the nitty-gritty with meditation and moving the energy around and doing spiritual practices that actually you can say, hey, I slipped into a higher state of consciousness today, or I've been in a higher state of consciousness, or boy, I'm sure glad I have my spiritual practices because I was really down and I felt depressed, and I did my spiritual practices, and guess what? It changed my whole day. And sometimes it can do that, and sometimes it won't, but you have to try. You have to try, people. And sometimes I teach spiritual practices on here, what I think would help people. And I talk about how you can do certain meditations. I've done tons of videos on meditations and Kriya and Tantra Yoga and splatter vision and anything that would stretch your consciousness into another direction, or widen your consciousness, or widen your angle of spiritual vision. And I like talking about that kind of thing, and I like teaching it, and then I like to get feedback on how people are doing with it. And I haven't heard any feedback on any of that stuff, so it makes me wonder if people practice any kind of spiritual practice, meditation or what, and if you do, share it, because that's the most encouraging thing that we can have on the Campfire Council or anywhere, just on, on YouTube or just out there. Because there's tons and tons and tons of talking heads, okay, talking about everything that's going on in the duality in the lower realms here. But do you actually do spiritual practices, mudras? Does anybody know what a mudra is? Does anybody remember what prana is? Does anybody know what chi is? Does anybody know what the chakras on the body are, the energy centers? Does anybody know some of the saints and mystics that have become enlightened and how they became enlightened? Do you practice a form of yoga? Do you breathe yogic breathing, or do you not even notice your breath? I mean, there's a meditation, you sit and just notice your breath, and there's a mudra. Okay, a mudra is a hand position or a body position that allows you to tap into spiritual energy. Okay, and you can use different mudras in different positions. Okay, this one is a mudra. Okay, that's a mudra where you touch your thumb to your two middle fingers there, and you curl your other finger under your lead finger, and then your little finger straight out. And if you rest with this, if you sit in a lotus position and you rest with that, guess what it does? It strengthens your heart, your shen, your spirit. And you don't think it does? Well, then you're not aware, because it does. It makes an instant change like that, just holding your hands a certain way. There's another mudra where you stand and you put this thumb against your lip and you hold it out here like this, and you gaze at the tip of your little finger into nothingness. It's called gazing into nothingness. And you hold your arm out to the side and you just kind of gaze at the tip of your little finger into nothingness. Then you can take it down and you can still be in that nothingness state of mind. There's all kinds of really beautiful things to learn, people. In yoga techniques, in pranayama, asana. Asanas are like the physical positions, or the mudras, just what I talked about. And then you have the qigong, where you stand in different positions and allow the energy to flow. And every one of these little things that you know, or that you add to your quiver, okay, as time goes on, helps you. As you age, whatever, it helps you get to the ancient infant. I love that term. Brian Brown Walker coined that term in the introduction of his book, or his interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, the ancient infant. Think about that for a while. Because when you tap into all that is, that all that is the ancient infant. And so it's ancient knowledge and wisdom that is felt in the form of being an infant and not knowing anything, okay, and going back to essence, okay, pure essence, and going back to the beginning, okay. And the beginning is that higher level of consciousness that you're tapping into. Now, you can call it God. Okay, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But just remember that when you call it a certain thing, you might make associations that aren't beneficial to you if you've been programmed. Okay? God is none other than the highest self that you can go to. That's my opinion. It's like 7 steps to heaven, you know. There's an old Miles Davis song, 7 Steps to Heaven. It's funny, there's 7 chakras in the body. What did he know? So when you're raising your consciousness, you're leaving this physical realm and you're climbing the ladder up and getting in tune with the highest level of consciousness. Excuse me. Let me have a little drink here. The highest level of consciousness that you can go to, that you've attained, that you've learned how to climb. It's like when you learn how to climb a mountain, okay, when you learn how to climb a ladder, when you learn how to climb anything, you take it 1 step at a time. You don't leap up 10 steps. You take it 1 step at a time. Okay? And I want to hear how people are progressing. I want to hear how people, I think that on the Campfire Council and then in general, people should tell each other about how they feel about how, you know, what kind of spiritual progress they made, or what kind of little vision they had, or what, even if it's a dream. I want to hear that. That's music to my soul. That's a balm for my soul. When I hear people, excuse me, talking about spiritual matters. And hey, you know, I went out, things like this, like, hey, you know, Thunder, I went out in the yard today and I remember that thing you taught me about splatter vision, and I know you've been wondering if I've been working on it, and so I really wanted to tell you about this experience I had today, and so forth and so on. You get my drift here? And I just want to hear that because it makes me happy. Not because I'm some kind of like school teacher that said, did you do your alphabet today? Did you practice your alphabet? No, it's not it's not somebody taking a ruler and smacking your hand. It's like, hey, I get enjoyment when I teach things out of hearing how people progress or they don't, so that I can help them. And it doesn't even have to be about anything that I've taught here. It can be about some Zen meditation that you've discovered and that you want to share with people, and that your experience of it. And hey, I felt this energy going up my spine, and all of a sudden I had this flash, like everything around me was unreal, and you know, whatever. Get my drift here? Because in the end, whether it's the end of your life or the end of this world or the end of this, that's all we have. And even right now, not even in the end, I mean even right now, because this is the end in a sense. You know, there's always an ending of certain things. You know, when you're a spiritual person and you do spiritual practices, there's endings and beginnings, endings and beginnings, endings and beginnings. Oh, I ended that way of thinking and I'm beginning a new way of thinking, because you know what? I kicked it up a notch today on my spiritual ladder. Or I was up a notch and then I came down, you know, I was up 2 notches and then I came down a notch and then I went up 3 notches and then I came down 2 notches. And I felt this and I experienced that. And I felt the energy run through my body, you know, Thunder. That's what I want to hear. What would we be talking about if we were sitting around a campfire and talking? Would we just be talking about the world situation on and on and on ad nauseum? Or would we be talking about a drum circle, or the history of the drum, or the vibratory resonance of the drum and what that does to the human aura, or the flute and what different notes enhance? Or how about some sitar music or some Indian music that raises the consciousness? Or how about vocal inflections along with sitar music? Or how about Native American flute and how I use that in my meditations? And it could go on and on and on about beautiful things that we could talk about. Beautiful things that uplift the soul, rather than continually dwelling on world conditions, which is all an illusion. It's all a friggin' illusion, and you know it. And what do world conditions do? Well, you're no longer in that state of mind of the world but not in it, or my kingdom is no part of this world, or you're not in that area anymore. You're in the duality, you're low down. You're in the dirty low down, baby. That's where you are. You're groveling around in the mud, in the muck of this reality, which it has become. And many spiritual traditions say, that that you can spend time in the muck, or you can spend time in the the higher realms. It's up to you. We're here, I know, in the world, and it's like, let's put it this way, people. Even if you tried 24/7 to be in a spiritual state of mind and do spiritual practices, let's say you wanted to just do yoga all day, or switch from yoga to Tai Chi to this and that, and you do that, and that would be a very good thing to do, or doing a walking meditation wherever you go, whether you go out your front door or whatever. Even if you tried to do that 24/7, you would get enough pollution and garbage from this lower duality anyway, whether you wanted it, whether you paid attention to it or not. It's in your face. It's in your face. Continually. All you got to do is walk out the door. All you got to do is look out the window. I look out the window where I'm staying right now, and it's like a city, and I'm like looking at these tall buildings, and I'm saying to myself, well, there's the duality, and there's like probably about 50,000 to 100,000 people living in all these what I call people coops, like chicken coops, crammed together up in this high-rise building in a big monolithic structure that looks like a Monument Valley, only with a bunch of little windows in it. Horrific. And what happens when a big earthquake comes? Yeah, so, the thing is that we can't just walk around saying we're spiritual people, or we can't espouse a certain ideology or practice, or like in the Campfire Council, we can't say, well, these are our precepts, and then not even pay any attention to them. Go down and read them sometime. You can hook a spiritual practice up to almost every one of those precepts, I would think. That's how I kind of envisioned it. But spiritual practices, people, that's the only thing that pulls you out of the mundane goings on of life is spiritual practices, meditation, just sitting and watching your breathing, realizing that, what's around you, what's really around you. It's like when you go into a forest and you're a tracker, or let's say you're not even a tracker, let's just say you're you. Okay? One of the things that Tom Brown Jr., the world's foremost tracker, teaches is that you can't go out into an area of wilderness or nature and just sit there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and take a walk in it and then come back and think that you've experienced nature. You can't do that. Now, if you go out into, like by a little stream or somewhere, you go out alone, and you are alone in nature, and there's nobody around to distract you, and you sit there, you'll sit there for about 10 minutes and you'll start feeling almost like you're antsy, like, what do I do with myself? And once you break through that little threshold, okay, that little barrier of antsiness, and you just sit there and breathe in nature, and let's say you sit there for 20 minutes and you're still a little bit antsy, and then finally you sit there for 30 minutes and you're looking around going, wow, I never saw the word. Look at that bug over there on the blade of grass crawling up. Or you look down in the grass and you see all kinds of little bugs crawling through, in and out, weaving in and out and crawling up and down, little tiny things, and millworms and 100 different things. And then you notice, you look up in the tree and you see a nest up there. Wow, I didn't see that before. And you look around and you hear water, and then you look in the water and wow, there's a fish down there. But when you first came out there, you didn't see any of this shit. You were in another place. You were still back with the concrete and the TVs and the running cars and all that crap. And when you came out in the forest, you sat there for a minute, and it was like you were still there. You really hadn't transitioned into nature. But when you sit there for an hour, and you finally get by the antsiness, and you finally let go of the tension and everything else associated with where you were, and you open up your senses, your hearing, your touch, your taste, everything, to your surroundings, to natural surroundings, a healing begins. And the spirit that moves in all things starts to permeate your being. And you look around and you see stuff that you see clouds in the sky, you see the bird's nest up in the branch, you see the squirrel crawling up the branch, you can hear rodents scurrying around, you can hear the cricket off over here, you see all kinds of different colors, you see little flowers you never saw before, you see the patterns on the bark of the trees. All this stuff just becomes one giant hallucinatory experience of pleasure. But it's not a hallucination, that's what's real. Think about it. Don't just sit in your house and sit in front of your computer and walk from your kitchen to your bathroom to your... you can do that, but if you're in a spiritual state of mind, even that can become a learning experience, a spiritual experience. Then, because you start noticing everything around in your house that you never noticed before. You're not on autopilot. You're raising your consciousness to another level of awareness. Think about it. Seriously. You don't need to dabble on the internet all day. You don't need to constantly mentally masturbate on things that have no meaning, or that have little meaning, or that are going to do you little good. And when you communicate with people, do you realize that that person is you? And when you communicate with people, do you say what you really feel? Do you tell people you love them? Do you tell people that you appreciate them as another person in this huge cosmos we have, and creation, beautiful creation? Do you tell people that you appreciate them as part of yourself, and that you appreciate them as part of the God consciousness? Think about it. Think on these things. There's so many modalities and things that you can use every second and jump around to in your life. You can use Ayurvedic healings on yourself. You can use, Qigong, you can use yoga, you can use Tai Chi. Again, you can jump around and just do one little exercise of each continually, back and forth. Everything that you do, every movement. Okay? It could be a Tai Chi movement when I move my hand back and forth. Okay? It could be a Tai Chi movement. Okay? Or when you walk, could be a fox walk, or when you look around, it could be splatter vision, or when just your everyday experience. The ultimate goal is to be in a complete meditative state continually. Walking meditation, sitting meditation, talking meditation, watching yourself talk even, watching words come out of your mouth and what you're saying. That's a trip. And playing music and writing. You can make everything a spiritual practice, is what I'm saying, because you can hook it up with a real spiritual practice, okay, or a genuine spiritual practice, what I call genuine, because everything is connected like a web. On a spiritual level, everything is connected, and when you see the interconnectedness of it all, then you can use all your spiritual practices all at once, and you can say, oh yeah, I'm walking to the refrigerator right now and I'm in splatter vision, or I just walked outside and I'm in presence. I can feel presence everywhere. I can feel birds and trees, and even if you're in a city, you can look up and go, wow, there's a tree right there growing out of the concrete, or look up at the clouds or feel the wind. Wherever you are, there the world is. There the Great Spirit is. There is the Spirit that moves in all things is. Excuse me. I start talking and so anyway, those are some things that you should think about. Because the bottom line is, when you're as you progress along in life and as you gain wisdom and age, you realize that all of this other stuff out there is a striving after the wind, or in a sense, it's not even in the wind. The wind is real. That's what you want to feel. You want to feel the holy wind, but you can't ever catch the holy wind unless you do spiritual practices. Can you catch the holy wind? Sure you can. You can catch it, and you can channel it right down through you. Even when you're talking, you can do that. So just some things to think about, people. I would like to see more of that. I would like to see upbuilding things in the council and everywhere. Of course, we have to be real and we have to post certain things that are going on in the world, but we can always discuss that from a spiritual level, like I'm doing. We can talk about the suffering of mankind. All great masters talked about the suffering of mankind and wars and all kinds of things. They talked about wars, suffering of mankind, communities, cities, rulers, anything that had to do with life and death. They discussed from the spiritual level. And so, when you contemplate why we're all here, and really we're here to uplift each other spiritually, right? That's why I think we're here. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, it becomes non-productive spiritually. Anyway, food for thought, people. I'll leave it there today. And this right here too it's a mudra. Okay, so when you raise your hands up from the side and you come in, and you put your hands together, and you stand with your spine erect, and you relax, and you concentrate on this right here. When you think about this, what does this bring to your mind? What happens when you put your two hands together? And you meditate in this position, or you just sit there in this position. What comes to your mind? Do it right now and see what comes to your mind. With a deep relaxation and reverence for this as a mudra, as a spiritual practice. When you touch all your fingers and thumb together and lay your hands flat on one another and bring it into your sternum with your arms slightly out but relaxed and your shoulders relaxed, and just watching your breath. What do you think that? Try that. Because immediately you go into connection with Great Spirit. You go into what we call a prayer, what I call a prayer or a ritualistic mode in connection with. It's almost like you're calling Spirit down, or Spirit's calling you up. I'll leave you with that. Walk the red road. This is Thunder.